Today's guest is Jonathan Pritchard. Jonathan Pritchard is a mentalist, which is a type of entertainer specializing in appearing to read minds, predict the future, instant hypnosis, and other, what he calls, impossible skills. Eventually, he realized his talents could do more than entertain people, and that's when he began consulting for the world's largest companies. While Jonathan does not think psychic abilities are real, I think it's important to learn from people who know how these abilities can be faked. He obviously cannot give away any trade secrets, but it's a really interesting conversation.
Welcome to What the Fuck Just Happened. I'm your host, Liz Enton. If you listen to the intro, you know my story. If not, here's a brief summary. I'm a sciencey-skeptic, and when my dad died, I took a shot in the dark and decided to investigate if there was any possible evidence of an afterlife. I assumed that was as realistic as Santa Claus, but I was desperate. However, I was so blown away by what I discovered that I wrote a book and launched this podcast. In this podcast, I will be talking to some fairly normal people about some really weird shit. I speak with everyone from psychic mediums and afterlife researchers to ordinary people who've had some inexplicable experiences. So come, listen. There's no need to draw any final conclusions. Keep an open mind and wonder, what the fuck just happened? Hi everyone, today I have a really interesting guest. His name is Jonathan Pritchard, and I will let him do his intro.
Well, hello there. I am super happy to be here. Basically, my background is I've been touring the world doing a mind reading show that uses applied psychology, showmanship, and a healthy dose of moxie to make it look like I can make the impossible happen. And over the past 8 years or so, depending on how you measure it, I've been moving more into corporate speaking and consulting and businessy stuff. But the psychology and weird experiences part of life is what's most interesting to me.
So I think that's a really interesting thing to do, whether you believe some people can really read minds or not. You know, obviously this podcast, I'm sure you checked out, we do think there's some people who can do it, whatever the physics is behind that. I know very logically not everyone would agree with that. So what got you interested in doing stage, how do you, mentalism? Is that how you refer to it? Stage magic? Mentalism.
I do call it mentalism. It's kind of the technical term. Also, for shorthand, I usually just tell people, "Hey, I'm a mind reader for hire." Is basically it, and it's just fun. Really, it's just so much fun. I get to have fun with people for a living, and I got started, yeah, doing magic tricks. Any beginner's magic book has, here are some tricks you can do with stuff you can find around the house. Here's some rope tricks. Here's a couple mind reading tricks. Here are a couple illusions you could build out of cardboard. And I tried everything, but the mind reading stuff seemed to be the most impressive. It was what amazed people the most. And we tend to go where we get the easiest results. So for me, that was doing the mind reading stuff, because a 13-year-old kid who could tell you what street you grew up on is deeply disturbing. It's a pretty wild experience, but as the 13-year-old kid, you're like, "Oh, that's fun. Let me keep doing that."
You can get as specific as what street someone grew up on. Because when I'm picturing cold reading, and I'm going to do a poor rendition because I'm not a cold reader, is you are able to say things like very general, although skilled at it. You know, like you're struggling now with what you want to do with your life, which is typical if you're facing someone who's maybe 20.
Right. So there's a lot that goes into mentalism and this whole world. And a lot of mentalism got its start in the late 1800s when spiritualism was in the top three most popular religions in America. And that's kind of its background is we're able to talk to dead people, not just talk to dead people, but also get dead people to talk back to us, which is the real impressive trick. So there's a lot that went into that. And in the late 1800s, that was just a thing people could demonstrate that they could do. And a lot of magicians said, hey, we know that you're just doing magic tricks under the guise of, oh, we can talk to dead people and that kind of thing. And then it moved from spiritualism and getting connected to spirits, and then moved more into the scientific approach in the 1930s of, well, we're going to prove that this is real. And then it shifted more towards the parapsychology realm. And we're now going to do studies and we're going to put this in a laboratory environment and do double blind tests and that kind of thing. Well, not a lot of those tests were up to snuff for the scientific community. So then instead of saying, well, this is parapsychology, it then kind of retreated to, well, this is just really good psychology. And then the methods, the claimed methods, weren't, oh, I'm talking to spirits. It's more, oh, I'm reading your facial expressions in order to develop my intuition of what it is. From my experience, for corporations and companies that hire me at conferences and that kind of thing, they're paying me to create these experiences 100% of the time. They're not paying me to maybe guess at this kind of thing and take a wild stab at it. Like if I'm not doing what I'm getting paid to do, I'm not getting paid. So the the methods that I'm using, think of them like a Vegas magician. Vegas magicians do tricks with tigers. I'm doing tricks with information. And they're really good tricks to make it look like I can read body language or I could talk to the spirits of people who have passed on. But at the end of the day, I'm getting paid to use whatever methods make it work. So I'm saying all of that to say that you're right. The body language reading and micromuscular expressions is mostly founded on bunk science. It's not real because you're right. A half smile that lasted for 0.300 milliseconds or whatever would never tell me what your pet's name was. It just wouldn't. But it's an easier framing for most people to accept as this is how it's working than I'm in touch with a spirit guide named whatever McGee, however you want to frame it. So, in the world of mentalism, the psychology angle is the most popular presentational ploy, but they're both equally as not useful on stage for the entertainment dynamic. So that's why you're right. Those facial tics won't tell me anything, and that's why I have to use trickery behind the scenes to make it all work.
And I know I can't ask you this, and I'm so itching to ask you how. And I know obviously you can't ask that, and in terms of micro expressions and cold reading, for example, if someone was
Uh-huh.
to be a fake medium, they would say, you don't have your mother who's passed, do you? And then whether you say yes or no, they can say, that's right. I mean, that's a very crude trick. If you were to do it
Right.
one-on-one, do micro expressions and body language, does that work at all? Or is it still more stage magic, secret magic tricks?
It's still stage magic secret tricks. Because the body language has its place and it is useful, but not in the way that 99% of people think it is. Because the belief at the bedrock of it is that there are universal displays of emotion that always mean the same thing no matter who you are. And none of the research has backed that up, right? Because everybody expresses their current emotions in a completely unique way because they've never been in this situation before. So a laugh doesn't always mean that something is funny, and a smile doesn't always mean that somebody's happy, and crying doesn't mean that they're always sad. So that is the belief at the bottom of, oh, body language reading is always useful because, oh, he's got his arms folded so he's closed off and uncomfortable. Like, no, it's really cold in this office, right? So the place where it is useful is for a performer like me or a medium or somebody who is in the same situation again and again and again and again, and the only element that changes is the person sitting across the table. So when everything else is the same, you can then know what is changing the person's demeanor because you've got that baseline of, I've done this with 3,000 participants now. I've got 3,000 data points to pull from that my non conscious mind can start to recognize these patterns. So within the context of my shows, I come out and I do the exact same 3 minutes that I've been doing since I was 13 years old in front of nearly 19,000 audiences over the years. So I know that if people laugh at this point, okay, it's going to be that kind of audience. Or if that guy doesn't laugh here, then he won't be good for this routine later, but he'd be perfect for the one that's coming up 2 routines from now. So the body language reading is useful once you have a baseline of behavior with somebody, then you can measure their current behavior, how it matches or deviates from the previous behavior that you've been able to see. So that's why somebody who just claims to walk up to you and go, I can tell by the you looked up and to the left that you're thinking, no, that just I've not seen enough evidence to make me believe that somebody is able to do that without being able to recognize the trickery behind the scenes that they're trying to use to make you believe that that's what they're doing.
I feel like if I was to go fake and pretend to do this, I would have a secret partner there who was a few feet away pretending to be on their phone and probably do like some facial recognition technology. So, like
Right.
snapping
Yeah.
photos of people nearby and then like texting me. And obviously, I would have to develop years of skills. So, I'm not clearly looking at my phone. I'm sure it's a lot of it's rhythm. But I am curious as technology is improving and for better or worse, we're going to have some creepy levels of facial recognition technology that probably every individual will have access to. To what extent do you think that's going to influence or change your art skill performance?
That's a really fun question because magicians and and that kind of mystery performer have been the first people to adapt any kind of new technology. Weirdly, the first movie special effects guy was Georges Méliès, who was a French magician because he recognized, oh, okay, I can play with the medium this way to create these effects. Neat. And there were magicians that adapted radio technology very early on. So when radio was still a very new technology and not everybody even had a radio in their house, there were some magicians that built out radio broadcasting in their own home so that their wife or kid could be in the study and then tell them secrets with the earpiece in their ear, with the receiver in a loop of coiled copper around their neck, plugged into a battery, right? Like all sorts of just wacky setups when it was a cutting edge technology. So there will be some magicians that use these kinds of technologies, and also audiences that get more comfortable with those technologies. It's kind of presenting a weirder challenge in that if we've got AI that can read minds, why is it impressive that a human being is reading minds? We've got a computer that can do it. So why you? So in a way, the available real estate for human amazement is still getting smaller and smaller. So in another way, it's easier if you can show, hey guys, I've got $10,000 challenge to anybody who can prove that I'm using that fancy AI mind reading thing to do this, that there are any radio things in my ears or secret coding devices or hidden trap doors with somebody signaling me. I don't do any of that stuff. It's all just communication. Here we go.
Because I would think if someone in like 1980 went up to a stranger and was like, "Oh, I know your name. I know this. I know this," the person would be freaked out. Like, this is impossible. You just defied the laws of the universe. And today, you'd be like, "Okay, wait, do you follow my Instagram?" And it would have another, "You're creepy. You're stalking me," or, but you'd have a normal answer.
Exactly.
If Google Glasses ever took off, that would just be the norm, to just meet someone and know their whole bio within a split second.
Right, right. Which is part of the presentational angle is to go, you guys know that I could look you up on Facebook. I could figure out who your relatives are and that kind of stuff. That I might have talked to you before the show and done some Sherlock Holmes stuff. So from this point forward, it all starts now. I want you to think of something completely unique, something you've never shared on social media. It'll stay in this room. I'm not going to share it anywhere. So, helping people think through those, I bet he just looked us up on Facebook, right? Because as one of my buddies, Brent, was always talking about, we design our experiences for that car ride home when they're in the room with us and, oh, it's amazing. Okay, that's neat. And then they're driving home having that conversation with their friends going, you know, that was fun, but now that I've had an hour to think about it, I bet he just looked us up on Facebook. And everybody goes, "Yep, that was it. Oh, okay. He just googled us. That's all it was." And now they're free from living with that wonder of what's possible with your mind. So you have to anticipate all of those conversations and then design the experience so that they can't use those as the escape valve later of, he just did technology.
Personally, I know whenever I see a magic show, it's always really fun to try to figure out. But in reality, I don't really want to know. Like, the few times I watched behind the scenes and Googled how some things were done, it's really interesting, but then there's a disappointment. So maybe like 10 years later, I'd like to know how a trick was done. But at the time, I like walking away with, I just, it leaves a mystery that I think I really enjoy.
Right, right. Yeah, and that is a great detail, is that the experience is, wow, incredible, and then the method can be very disappointing. Oh, it was duct tape and cardboard. That is the saddest thing I've ever heard in my life. And then deeper, it's, now what the real mystery to me is, why in the world can duct tape and cardboard create these experiences that you'll remember for the next 50 years of your life? To me, that's the most powerful part of magic, is we're just wired to be amazed. It's just part of our wiring that makes it possible that something as simple as cardboard and duct tape can blow your mind and transform your life. And to me, that's the real power of magic and alchemy, of taking mundane physical elements and really stupid methods to create impossible outcomes for people because that's what any kind of self improvement is. You're like, well, that was stupid, but it worked. And now my life is totally different and it's awesome now. But all it took was writing down what I wanted in the next year. Like when you say it out loud, those secrets are about the most disappointing thing you could ever imagine, but everybody wants the answer to be way more sexy than it really is when those really not sexy methods get you really sexy results.
That's what I noticed. I took magic classes at summer camp as a kid. It was really fun, but it changed, the feelings about the tricks. It went from one of sort of tingling awe to, wow, that's so interesting. And it's interesting to learn about psychology. And it's something I would like to learn about how tricks are done, but not ones I ever just saw. I want to leave that night with the mystery or that experience. So, to what extent, I read a book that was very interesting once, because I always thought magic tricks were just purely about physical tricks. I'm trying to word that, but it was about neuroscience and that our eyes, to an extent to which we don't see reality, such as how when we make up, our brain fills in the center of objects because we don't see them.
Yep.
To what extent does our brain not perceive reality, and to what extent do you play with that?
Oh, that is the playground. That really is it because we like to think that we are very aware of what's going on, that we're very conscious of what we're doing, and that we're on top of our game. You can't get one over on me. When really, our senses are always perceiving, but our non conscious mind's number one job is to pre filter everything and only let through what we value. Because if you were aware of everything you could possibly be aware of and were conscious of it, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed in the morning because you're just overwhelmed with sensory input. So our minds are more active filtering out useless information than we are paying attention to what's valuable. And that gets into tricky territory because it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy of what you value is what you notice, which reinforces those values as being the most useful because look at how much of this is around. It's everywhere I look. So, of course, it makes sense that I believe this because I keep seeing the only thing I can see is justification for my belief patterns. So your belief structure tells you it's valuable to filter out anything that disagrees with that value structure, and then you're only left with evidence for your current belief set.
Now, have you noticed, are there different cultures that you have to adjust your tricks or performances to based on what certain cultures might focus on over another?
In a way, yes. What you have to adjust is the way that you talk about what you're doing or the topics you focus on because maybe asking somebody who their first crush is might be a little too familiar and we don't know each other like that. So in this place, first crush doesn't fit, maybe first pet, but something more mundane would be more culturally appropriate. But the cool part is that the wiring that makes magic tricks possible is pre-cultural. It's it's at a fundamental human operating system level. Doesn't matter where you grew up. When that tiger shows up, wow, that's incredible. Where did that come from? It was empty and then it wasn't. What? Come on. So magicians have been looking at this stuff for 10,000 years before written history started. So they've got a real head start based on the compared to psychologists who are coming at it from the neuroscience angle. Magicians, regardless of culture, have existed, done essentially the same kinds of effects because we're dealing with deep archetype desires, fundamental human motivations, like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. That was popular back in the Great Depression when most families were real hungry and a rabbit could feed a family tonight. So it was more about being able to provide out of nowhere, how to solve hunger. So when you look deeper into most of the most popular magic tricks, they're popular and classic because they connect to that deep human need. Like there's a routine called the miser's dream, where you just keep pulling coins out of the air and dump them in a bucket. Like who wouldn't want to just pull money from thin air? And in a way, you could think of it like, oh yeah, coming up with a business idea or being an entrepreneur is exactly that. You have an idea and you pull a business out of thin air and people pay you for it. Like, that's magic. So it really is deeper than cultural level, and you don't really need to change much. When Siegfried and Roy were the big illusionists when I was growing up, along with David Copperfield, they can tour all over the world and not have to say a thing because what they're doing is obviously magic. You don't need to put it into a cultural context to appreciate that box was empty, box has tiger. What?
I was kind of interested if it went to more how people's neurons develop to pay attention to certain things. Just on a side note, I took this test once that was kind of interesting. It's one's done by Yale University, and they're studying schizophrenia versus psychic mediums and hearing voices. Now, I live in New York City most of the year, sometimes LA. So they're like, do you ever think you see people out of the corner of your eye? Do you ever think you're hearing voices of people talking next to you? I'm like, well, when you live in New York,
Yeah, hard not to.
100%. And they're like, how many times a day do you perceive that? I'm like a million. I don't ever not, but if I lived
Right.
in a small town in the country, probably if I said all day I'm hearing that and seeing that, that would be investigated very differently. So that was just something I was like, we must all develop neurons to perceive different things, because I also have managed to basically filter out all the people around me. Whereas someone comes to New York for the first time, I've had friends visit and they're like, it's so loud, there's so many people, there's too much information coming in.
Hmm.
It goes past that. The type of mentalism tricks goes past this level of neuron awareness that we develop based on our circumstances.
Right, because that is called habituation, where you become desensitized to a particular type of sensory input. It's like putting on a watch. You feel it for the first minute, and then you got better things to do, and you don't feel it anymore. So you can get used to sensory input real quickly, and it just becomes background noise. Like when I lived in Chicago, there were a couple apartments that were right by the train, and the first week, oh man, the train was super loud. And then people would visit and go, "How do you sleep with the train there?" I'm like, "Oh, what train? What are you talking about?" So yeah, you're right. You do get used to it pretty quickly.
Now, I know you mentioned the rabbit being pulled out of the hat, and that was popular at the time due to the depression and starvation. Is there an equivalent today that you think is the primal need of our culture that you use? Is that trade secrets?
No, it's not a trade secret. In fact, it's the thing I'm trying to shout as loud as possible to help people understand, which is as we become more interconnected in a digital way, we become even more lonely and isolated in base physical reality, which is how the human operating system has been designed to flourish in. We're in person social creatures. And we've got this bizarre surrogate called social media that we think is filling that need at the expense of starving ourselves for in person human relationships and connections with great people. So these digital tools are phenomenal at maintaining familiarity and connection to a certain degree. They're best when we leverage them to then connect in person. We tend to be happier as people. So that to me is why mentalism is so popular nowadays. Is it's a glimmer of hope that we can still connect with each other, and that some stranger can see us for who we are. And that is a beautiful thing that we don't get to experience all that often. So I think that the heyday of mentalism is mostly because of how disassociated people feel from their online experience versus being able to meet a fun guy at a party who can tell us and show us, I really heard you. I know that your pet's name is Fluffy, and I'm present to witness that about you. And then you're like, oh, I feel seen. That guy's incredible. Oh, I'm so happy. Okay, we're not all just ships passing in the night anymore. So being able to connect people and connect with people is the magic trick du jour.
Okay, so I agree with you about a lot of the loneliness. I don't really like how virtual everything has become. And I can personally identify that that's been a real human need on my end, and especially how lonely I felt in 2020, where I could, my whole social life with all of ours, it was virtual. So you do think people can, there
Yeah,
is a
I
skill where
I
some people,
think
or maybe
that
all of
being
us
able
have that
to
skill
size
where
people
we
up
can
and
to an
to
extent
connect
read a
is
person when we
part of
first meet
our
them.
human operating system. And I have a weird way of thinking about life and how life works that goes back to ancient Pythagoras and the Pythagorean mystery cult. So, to me, a metaphor that makes a lot of sense is that imagine that there is a universal radio signal, and our bodies are radios like a boombox, and we've pretty much got the same components, and we can take that signal and broadcast it, and that is our life. And we're all broadcasting the same signal, so it's like every radio is tuned to 93.7, and the make and model of the radio means that their 93.7 is mostly the same, but has some key differences. It sounds different. This one might be a little more bassy. This one might have more treble, that kind of thing. So, if we're all tuned in to the same radio signal, makes sense that we are connected in a fundamental way below our conscious awareness and the ideas we can have on a moment to moment basis. So to me, we're all animated by the same spirit, that there is no unique Jonathan soul or unique soul of somebody else. It's more there's one soul that gives rise to our lives, and then the signal keeps going when the radio's broken. Like, okay, the radio's broken and that radio doesn't broadcast the signal, but that doesn't mean that the signal stops. So the conscious part, the awareness part of who you are has a beginning and an end. You come online when you're young and then you go offline when you're not young anymore. But the essential part of being is forever and universal. So to me, I like to use the theatrical framing of that radio signal that allows me to dial into your broadcast if I can connect with the signal more effectively. And it would be weirder if those weird connections didn't happen than they do happen. So yeah, you've got weird experiences, as silly and mundane as it might seem, thinking of someone for the first time in a year and then they call. Like that's really cool. It's that mundane but amazing experience that is life. So I think that those strange experiences happen. They're delightful, they're magical, they're a part of being human, but anybody who says I'm going to make it happen on demand for pay, I would be more dubious and looking for those tricky magic techniques than anything else.
So you don't believe any psychic mediums are genuine?
I haven't seen somebody who I would say, "Oh yeah, they're clearly psychic. They're not using cold reading or advanced mentalism techniques to create the appearance of being psychic." Right? Like I I would love to. I want to. That'd be fantastic. I just haven't experienced them.
Got it. Have you ever read the studies, like up to quintuple blinded studies of Dr. Julie Beischel? Because she is
Yeah.
a pharmacologist who studies psychic mediums, and she's done up to blinded studies, has concluded they are getting information under tight controls that they seem to not be able to get normally. So, yeah, it just might
Yeah.
be something you'd find interesting.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll check that out for sure.
I know one stage magician who also is a parapsychologist, Lloyd Arbach. I don't know if you know his work at all,
Mm-mm.
but yeah, he's very interesting. And he said he's heard this from other mentalists. Some think psychic abilities can be real, some don't. And they've all said they've had moments while doing a show that they've just known things they can't explain. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Where a picture will come into my head and go, I don't know why, but this is in my head right now. And then it'll just floor them because like, oh yeah, that's such and such a thing. So yeah, so that's why I'm saying like those things happen. I've experienced them myself, had them happen to me. So that's why I'm saying if somebody says they can make that happen on demand, like I could clap my hands, that's why I'm saying I don't think so because I've never seen anybody be able to do it just boom, like here we go. But those things do happen. So that's why I'm more cautious around people who say, "Oh, I can make this happen on demand anytime I want with anybody I want." Like that sounds a lot like a mind reading trick. So yeah, it's fun, and when you're in the showbiz long enough, you learn to just take those chances and fire in the dark. And if it happens to be a connection, that's a miracle. My goodness, he's the real deal. And if it doesn't connect, people go, well, not everything works, so it's all good. So there's literally no downside from a performing standpoint of why you wouldn't go for those. I'm just feeling this and I'm going to share it with you. You would be holding a lot back if you didn't go that direction.
You must be shocked when that happens to you. If you normally do this as a trick and something pops in your head that's so specific and random.
Yeah, it is. That is the most amazing part of what I do. And also I do a lot of tarot card reading gigs where I just say here's what I see when I'm looking at these cards, and it freaks people out. So that's the fun part, is that when I'm doing tarot readings, I don't need to do any of the extra sauce. I don't need to pull a trick on anybody. I don't need that kind of behind this curtain extra trickiness. The cards are weird enough as they are. And I think of it a lot like the magic of songwriting. You'll hear a song and go, "Oh my god, that's me. That this song is me." Like, no, the songwriter has never met you. They don't know you. They wrote it, and we can't help but to bring ourselves to every experience and embody every story that we hear, and then we can identify ourselves in these creative works. So I won't know what it means to somebody. I won't know what they're experiencing. I'll just know I said this because the cards say it, and then they're going, "How in the world did you know?" I'm like, I didn't know anything. I just said the thing, and then you're the one that's amazed. I have no clue what it is. So it's not always I know exactly what this will mean to this person, so I'm going to say it. It's more say whatever comes in my mind, and then they provide the meaning and connection, but then they ascribe that miracle to me instead of themselves of being able to connect the dots of magic on their own. So that's why I like to see myself as a facilitator of magical experiences rather than the cause of magical experiences.
And then also, when you're saying you read tarot, you don't consider yourself a genuine tarot reader, whatever that would mean. It's part of mentalism, part of a performance.
I see myself as uh, if there were a job title called secular shaman, that would be on my business card. I own secularshaman.com. It's not a website I keep up, but it's one that I built just to plant my flag because to me it's the magic of meaning. And to me that is the most magical part of being alive is creating meaning for ourselves. And I think that a lot of that was figured out in Pythagoras's time, the mystery cults and metaphysics and the science of meaning and all of that nature of being, all that got ironed out a long time ago, before Buddhism became ism, before Christianity became an ism, before any kind of organized religion attributed human insight as, oh, this guy figured this out about the world, and therefore we're going to be all about this dude. So that's why, to me, a lot of religions are a personality cult more than they're a study of the nature of being, using our logical faculties to pierce the veil of meaning and the way of the universe. So that's why when I'm working with tarot, I'm not a real tarotist. I'm more about I'm a artist of meaning using different mediums to connect with strangers I meet. And there are a variety of tools in my toolkit to help facilitate that. At the heart of it, the real magic is that connection and seeing somebody else and really being with them in the present moment and creating meaning together.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the name. What was it? The website, the
Yeah, secularshaman.com.
secular shaman. As someone who's an atheist who studies afterlife evidence, I'm still consider myself an atheist. So I love what you've said about religion. And I think based on scientific data, there is now probability of an afterlife. What I'm interested in. And then I just want to ask you, I want to back up a little bit. From what you were saying about describing our bodies as like radios, that sounds like you do think that we do survive bodily death in a form of our consciousness. Is that true? Or do you think you
Mm-mm.
don't?
No, to me,
You think consciousness is created by our brain?
yeah, that consciousness is the compounded experience of the radio signal resonating with our water bags called bodies that together give rise to consciousness and awareness. That awareness is bounded by time, and anything that starts, like this radio is built, birthed, and then has its functional period, and then the components break down and it can no longer tune the signal and the broadcast stops. So your consciousness and awareness are an ephemeral experience of reality, but the animating spirit is forever and omnipresent because everywhere these radios have gone in the universe, they're still broadcasting the signal because our Earth hasn't been in the same place in the universe ever because the galaxy is spinning, the galaxy is moving through the universe. So, from if you had a God's eye view of reality, the Earth has never been in the same place twice. So it's kind of like that's why the metaphor kind of breaks down in that 93.7 is broadcasting from this city, and as you drive away from it, that signal fades. But everywhere we've been, we're still alive, right? So that's why to me that spirit has to be everywhere all at once, has always been there, waiting for the radios to modulate that signal into life. So I think it's, yeah, some kind of spirit with water as the antenna that helps dial in that signal that we then experience as lives that have beginning and end. But that's why I don't think that we have individuated souls, and I'm still going to be aware of my Jonathanness when I die. It's more of I'm letting go of identifying with Jonathanness as me more than recognizing me as a temporary experience and confabulation of spirit, body, mind, and all that kind of stuff.
We can get sidetracked with this for the rest of the podcast. It's fascinating. I mean, this is getting into philosophy and science and more of an emphasis on philosophy because we don't have enough of science to really back a lot of these theories up. I find that a really interesting take.
Yeah, it used to be way more common in ancient Greece, and that kind of fundamental animating spirit idea kind of lost out to the atomists, and the only thing that's real is physical reality. If it's not a thing, it's not real. And that camp won out 8,000 years ago, basically.
Right. It seems like it's the majority. It's either religion, which just seems a little, no disrespect to anyone's beliefs, but a little fantastical, going to this perfect heaven and no data backing any of it up, or just pure neuroscience that everything's material and there isn't another layer to it. I would agree that it's more along of what you said, except I have come to think that most likely in that radio cloud signal, our consciousness is based and continues when we're not in the body. I hope I'm right in that assessment, but how do we
Yeah,
really
yeah,
know? We don't.
right, exactly.
On your site, you put one thing you can teach is forbidden skills. I just thought that was a really intriguing description. Are you allowed to share any of those? Are those secrets that for tell me a little about that.
Sounds like it's working. the, that was it. The secret skill essentially is influence, persuasion. And in the dark arts angle, it's protecting yourself from manipulation and coercion, being able to recognize when somebody is trying to leverage your fundamental psychology to your expense and their benefit. So helping people understand how to help people to everybody's benefit and recognize when you're getting manipulated or cheated.
Life would be a lot better if I think we were all a lot more aware of that.
Exactly.
Now, do you think most of the manipulators, do you think it's conscious and intentional, or is it unintentional?
It's like any other skill. You are unconsciously incompetent to begin with. Then you become consciously incompetent. Man, why do I never get what I want? Then you become consciously competent. You're like, I'm gonna really try to get this person to do what I want them to do. How can I make this person do what I want to do? Then you figure it out, and then you get so good at it that you are unconsciously competent, and then You go, that's just the way I am. And it's a lot like juggling. At first, you're not a good juggler. You're not born a good juggler. You have to learn how to juggle, and it's really difficult. And then once you've been doing it for years, you can juggle, you can carry on a conversation, you can walk around the house if you want to, and you don't even have to pay much attention to it, but you're doing something that most people think is an inborn gift. So it's just a way that some people have found to use to get their needs met rather than win-win scenarios and pure voluntary only relationships.
And can that type of manipulation is usually sort of dark or causing harm in people's life? Can it ever be done for good? Like, I'm going to manipulate all these people who've been depressed and feeling down about themselves to feel great about themselves and motivated. Or, all these, maybe I've heard of it used this way with physical
Mhm.
illness, I guess a type of a placebo. You manipulate people that they're feeling healthy and then they end up getting better.
Yeah, solid question. That's why I like to make a distinction between manipulation as to your expense and my benefit to help kind of separate the some people don't know how to help themselves, don't believe they could be helped, and you need to magic them into believing in themselves because it's a belief that they couldn't help themselves in the first place that's reinforcing itself. So it's because of their magical idea that has developed the reality that they're experiencing. So you have to magic them out of it. It's not a logical reason that they believe what they believe, so it can't be a logical solution to their issue. So I think of it like if we are interacting and it's to your detriment and my benefit, that's a bad way of doing it. On the opposite side would be we're interacting and everybody is better off at the end of it. That's a better end of that thing. And then what is changing your beliefs or your behavior. And to me it's a continuum, but it's handier to think of them as polar opposites. So if I am getting you to change your behavior to my benefit, give me your wallet or I'm going to shoot you. That's coercion. So I don't care how you feel about it. I don't care what you're thinking. All I care about is what you're doing and I want to change your behavior. That's coercion. If I'm changing your beliefs to my benefit, to your hurt, that's what manipulation is. So I might withhold information so that you don't have a full understanding and therefore come to the wrong conclusion that I'm helping you. That's why you need to give me $50,000. Okay. On the opposite side of everybody is better off, if I am trying to change your behavior, but I'm not too concerned about your beliefs yet, listen, we need to go to this restaurant because it's got something that you'll love. It's got something that I'll love. This will be the best thing for all of us to hang out. We have to go to this restaurant. You don't need to believe that it's the best yet. I just need you to go there. That's what influence is. And then if I'm trying to change your beliefs, that's what persuasion is. Persuasion is fundamentally more effective because it's kind of upstream from all of your choices and actions that you're going to take. So if I can help you believe in yourself more effectively, if I can help you understand that you're more capable than you believe you were, then your behavior is going to change for the better as well. So if you're looking for long-term improvement, persuasion is the name of the game. Whereas most people are dealing with manipulation and people who try to take advantage of you with false promises or managed narratives. So that's why I try not to use manipulating people for their own good as a way of explaining it. I would rather talk about the difference between persuasion and influence and protecting against coercion and manipulation because not everybody knows what is going to help them the best. That's why we go to doctors who can then diagnose our situation then they persuade us to take medicine or exercise more regularly and to do all those things that will make us better off.
Okay, yeah, that all makes sense. And those words make a big difference: manipulation versus persuasion. You want to persuade your boyfriend to quit smoking versus an abusive relationship where you're persuading them to cut off ties with their friends.
Right. Or I'm going to kidnap your kid if you don't stop smoking. Right. It's like that's the weird gray area where you could get into some real bizarre justifications for some really bad behaviors because I'm doing it for the right reasons. Not really.
No, yeah, there's probably no justification. Well, I don't want to say no justification for kidnapping your boyfriend's kid if they're abusing them. I mean, then we're getting into all the ethics of philosophy, which is a whole.
Exactly. That's a whole can of worms itself.
So now, one thing in your books, it sounds like you also teach people how to change their brains to persuade. Manipulation has a dark connotation to it. So persuade themselves. I thought that was an interesting thing that you write about.
Yeah, and that's really the heart of it, which is helping people understand the power they have to have created the life that they're living and to recognize the decisions they've made to help it come into being. And if you believe you have no part in how your life has gone, then you have zero chance of changing it. So that's belief number 1 that has to change in order for anything else to change. So, understanding how your own mind works and how you've come to these conclusions and why your beliefs lead you to the experiences that reinforce your beliefs, and then seeing that cycle, you can then consciously interrupt that cycle at any point in that process to change what you're experiencing. And then you realize, oh, it's all self programming. I'll just write my own program to experience a different life and then run that system to better effect. Like that's pretty cool.
And your books definitely do a good breakdown of that. I'm tempted to ask you to explain it, but everyone really should check out his books because they really do a very good in-depth job.
Well, thank you. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate the direction that we got to go in. I don't normally get to talk about all this metaphysics stuff when I'm on business podcasts talking about ROI and marketing and the psychology of sales. It's like I don't get to talk about the radio broadcast and meat radios.
Oh, well, these are my favorite topics. I definitely have to step away and do the ROI and all that for the business part of this. But and can we end on just another fun topic or fun moment? Is you on your website showed a really fun magic trick, the key card, or if there's
Uh-huh.
another magic trick you want to explain. Obviously, you don't want to explain too many tricks because then no one will go see magic. But to me, what stood out is like, oh, it's just so obvious and simple, and kind of what I was saying. Why after a show I don't want to know because it takes away the beauty. But I just thought that was such a fun example.
Yeah, the basic idea is that from the method standpoint of how this works, it is so simple, so easy, you'll remember it for the rest of your life. But the presentation that you can use it with, you can say, I'm reading your mind, or I'm reading your micromuscular movements and reactions to your finger getting close to the card. So the method is this one small thing that can be clothed in any kind of presentational angle of, oh, I'm really good at reading you, or I predict that you're going to do this, or it's just so simple. And most people think you have to know the answer to something if you want to be an expert that people appreciate. But knowing where to find the answer is just as valuable if other people don't know where to find the answer. So that's why being a broker, of being a connector of people, of knowing, oh, my friend Eric does this and Stacy does that, and you've got this problem, so let me connect you to Stacy. You become a very important, valuable person because you're the facilitator of people solving their problems. So if you become the person that they go to find out where to solve their problems, all that money that flows through there can flow through you, right? So that's part of the business psychology thing, which is get connected with as many people as possible, be as proactive as you can about helping people solve their issues and letting them know where they can go. So you don't have to know a thing besides knowing people if you want to be successful. So I think a lot of people hold themselves back because they've got this core belief that I have to be the world's best at whatever it is that I'm doing before I can start helping people. But you can start helping people the minute you know something interesting, share it with the world because not everybody watched the same YouTube videos you did. Not everybody read the same books. Not everybody had the same mentors. So, whatever your weird experience is, start a podcast, start a website, start writing, get your mind out into the world as much as possible. And that's how you're going to help the most people now and after you're dead.
So where can people find you? And also just you work with both businesses and individuals and you do fun performing, correct?
I do. I don't just have irons in the fire, I have irons in a bonfire. That fire is so big, it can fit a whole lot of irons. So if you want to get connected, the easiest place to go is icanreadminds.com. From there, you can sign up for my email list where I share insights on business, on relationships, life, the fundamental motivational psychology, helping you understand human programming so you can program yourself to do whatever you need doing. That's what the email list is for. But yeah, I help companies and corporations doing sales trainings, and I help individual clients on mindset stuff. So yeah, if you have half an inkling of, oh, I'd like to talk to this guy, please, I want to hear from you. Sign up to the email list, reply to any of those emails, and it comes straight to me.
And I'll have all of that in the show notes. And definitely check out the magic trick, dig through his site because all very interesting and fun. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. It has been a real delight getting to chat with you. So thank you very much for having me on.
To get more information on what the fuck just happened, go to WTFJustHappened.net. There you can order my book, What the Fuck Just Happened? A Sciencey-Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of an Afterlife. And you can learn all about how I came to conclude that there most likely is an afterlife. You can also learn about the early stages of my grief and the amazing, fascinating people I met along the way. You can also read about how much I harassed them trying to get evidence, see if they were cheating, and see if they were sane. There, you can subscribe to our newsletter. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one. And if any of you have had a crazy what the fuck yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hi, reach out on either Instagram at WTF_just_happened_ or email me at hello@WTFJustHappened.net. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder what the fuck just happened.